Hey, welcome to another episode of Orukka, founder. Let's call it Diary of a Founder. Okay, I'm Patrick Enning. I'm the CEO and founder of Orukka Smart Ring. What's Orukka? So Orukka is a payment ring. Payment ring where you just tap and go with no need for your wallet, no need for your phones, and we just worry or just go towards a minimalist lifestyle. So if you love traveling, you love to be on the move, you don't like to be bogged down with phones and wallets and finding out what card to use, then use Orukka. And then we also have a fitness ring as well. So if you like, tracking your fitness, your health, then you can obviously use our rings. Okay, we have a payment ring and also a fitness ring, and also bracelets. If in case you don't like your rings, you can use a bracelet, and all connects on the one app. So it's a good community. You should join us. If you haven't thought about it or you haven't checked it out, do check it out. And today we want to talk about mortgages. Okay, should you get a mortgage? Yeah, is the mortgage the best thing in terms of investment? Yeah, and that's interesting because again, like I said, we care about minimalism at Orukka. That means flexibility is key for us. If you're locked down to your phone, then we try and avoid that. Yeah, that means someone snatches your phone, you're in trouble. Then put the phone away. Yeah, that's it. And why do you have your phone? Is it for payments? Then you have your ring. Why do you have your phone? Is that for to watch out for your fitness levels, your blood sugar levels, and all that with the Aura ring and people like that? Then get our ring, and you don't have to look at your phone. You don't even have to look down at your step or track it because you can track everything on fingertips. So that freedom is what we try and encourage. So with that being said, if you ask us, is a mortgage a good investment or not? Oh, I have a lot to talk about that. But I'll try and keep it short, brief, because we all need to get back to work. Again, I think the idea is to have these conversations, quick chats with myself, my thoughts, again, from someone who actually has a fit app. And we have a lot of these questions come through. So I want to make sure I address them on this platform. So mortgages are a true fact, right? And it's a fun fact as well. Mortgage means death penalty, like a death pledge. Think about that for a minute. So that means if when you get a mortgage, it's actually death pledge. It comes from, I think, a French word. Morgue means death, and then obviously pledge comes from that mortgage. And so the idea, I think, historically used to be that if you have a mortgage, then the idea is when you get the debt, it starts amortizing, it starts dying over time until you default. Okay. But I'm gonna be honest, these days mortgage is about death. Like you just pay it until you die. That's the truth. So now you can see where I'm going with my mind, right? And my thoughts. And hopefully this gets everyone thinking, okay? Because those days you get a mortgage, and you can look at the history, right? And but historically it used to be about making payments and that's it. Okay. But now it's people get mortgages for 30, 35 years. That's your entire life. If you're working and you're working, right? In truth, you only start work towards your late 20s, mid 20s, and then your mortgage is 35 years. That means you're waiting until you retire. That's death. So you've spent your entire life on that. So again, this is a time when people are starting to think about these things. And if you're on this channel, then that means it's either one, you're a user of Orukka, welcome, or two, it's come up under your feet because you worry about your mortgage, and you should worry about your mortgage, especially these days where people are prioritizing what's important to them. It's a lot of freedom today, a lot of financial flexibility. So why should you have a debt for 30 something years? So again, it's always good to look at the history of things, right? So again, you learn a lot more, you see where people come from with these things. So mortgages, they used to be like a deal between like landowners. So landlords used to have landlords, didn't used to have houses. It said it from the land, right? So they used to have a land. And what happens then? The tenant would go in and build on the land. And then it became a deal. That's where mortgages came from. Because what would happen is you pay X amount for the land and then immediately start paying down the debt, right? And that was it. And but you've got your house, so you're always going to have that. And then that helps you because when you're done, then you have that land, which was important. And then slowly around, I think again, these things always start with America. You're Americans. And so in America, I think it became something around like the American dream. So the American dream was to have a big, huge, elaborate house. Elaborate could be small as well, but you had to have a house before your dream starts. And that was all the what everyone aspired towards. They always wanted to have, an American dream. And, it became a prestige because those days only the rich people had land. Okay. So if you're really rich and you're elite, you had land. And therefore, if you then had a house, it was seen as a big thing. Okay. And obviously everyone in the world followed suit. Right now in Europe, wherever you are, if you move into a country, when you have a house and you become, you get a mortgage when you have a house. When you get a mortgage, then you're seen as achieving, right? And it became something big, which is true. It still remains big, right? But we have to ask the question, is it a good investment? Is it, would you say it's good? If, like, for instance, if you go in and you buy an asset, call it an equity, or, a stock, that stock automatically pays dividends, right? That stock pays you something. So that's an asset, that's an investment, because you put money together, you buy that, and it pays you. So that's what you need to think about. But the other hand, then I think a lot of people would argue, oh wait, but if you're paying rent, then you're throwing away money. Yeah, and that's always the argument. Rent is throwing away money because you could be using that and paying yourself. I agree. I agree. But then, do you own the house if you're actually paying a mortgage? Like, would you say it's not throwaway money if you're paying a bank for 30 years, right? Think about it. 30, 35 years, sometimes even longer, right? You're paying a bank that it's not really your house, right? Because you're paying for it. And then let's not forget the maintenance as well of that house. So there's a lot that goes in there that's not a one-to-one relationship between the rent to think about, right? And then if you're in the US, which is even worse, right? So the US, then you're paying tax on that house. Therefore, at any point after paying off the mortgage, if you're on year 29 or year 30 and you miss your tax on that 1 year, the house is gone. So you see what I mean? So in truth, is that really your house? Is that an investment? Or was the rent really throwaway money? It's what, these are questions to think about. And then obviously, again, I come from banking background, so 18 years in banking across, US, UK, Switzerland, USA, most top countries. I've been in banking there, especially yeah, investment banks, and that's why you see things happening, right? You see a lot of products being shaped. So you have to think about it. If you're a banker, this is one of the best products out there. No, think about it for a minute. If you're a banker, that means think also. So if you look at different point of view of a bank, okay, and always think about this thing, right? There's always someone winning. When you think you're losing, there's one person winning. If you buy, let me think about this for a minute. If you buy a car, okay, if you buy a car, you bought the car for, say $1,000, okay. If you buy the car for $1,000, the guy has made money, say 10%, so he's made $100 on it. That's good. And that's it. Once that's done, that's done. The transaction is done. The $10 or $1,000, 10,000 or $100 is gone, right? Just like that in a day or two. Now imagine if you sold something like a house. So you see what I mean? So think about it, right? If you sold a house or sold a credit card. So let's start with the simple credit card. The credit card, maximum you get in terms of interest, APR or late fees would be about 20% APR. So that means on the debt of 1,000, you have $20. That's nothing. Well, let's try mortgage. To mortgage a typical house now would be about I'd say 750,000. And what still? I mean, and I say this across the world. So if you go to a very lovely location in Africa, a very lovely location in South America, they're catching up. So that means a house that used to be worth like 1,000 is gone up now to 750, just to equate with different parts of the world. As crazy as this sounds, if you guys have examples, just let me know. Look at those houses and you're going to see how expensive they are these days. So 750 is actually realistic in terms of an average house across the world. Now, if you look at that, then and you say if you're a bank, right? How are you selling this? So you would sell this at maybe 2%, right? If you sell 2% and then that person is paying for a mortgage, for the next 35 years, right? That's 200K. That's 200,000 is what someone's paying as interest to own the house. 50. And assuming no tax as well, right? No tax, no maintenance, nothing. That's all you're paying to the bank. That's a lot of money to banks. So banks love it. So it's an interest of banks to take you in. And I have an episode in terms of how banks make money and if banks are really your friends, right? So it's the interest of the bank to sell you that product or get you in as a customer and sell you a mortgage, right? And then obviously everyone's going to promote mortgages because guess what? It also helps, right? So now I'll talk about that in a minute in terms of flexibility and if it makes sense, right? Because okay, so here's one: you have a bank. The bank comes in and has made 200,000 on you. Okay, you buy a house. Now the bank would definitely would not give you a mortgage to get a house. If you're in the US, they're not going to give you a mortgage to get a house in Europe, right? So it has to be a local bank that gives you property and finances the property in that area. So that helps, and that means the governments want to push that as well. The government would love that because that means they know where you stay. Okay, you pay tax in that region and you grow from there. So there you go. So my point then is if there's anything there you should think about who's making money here. Is it you or is it the bank? Or is it the bank or is it the government? Because I can tell you the government make a lot more money and they try and they push this as much as they can, you know. But I don't want to be too negative without going into, why mortgages make sense, right? So first things first, it makes sense because obviously it's a long term, stable investment. Okay. So if and COVID has ruined this. I'll talk about COVID in a minute. But if dad's from Virginia, your mom's from Virginia, your uncles and aunties are from Virginia, then it makes sense for you to get a house in Virginia. Okay. And that makes sense. That's stable. And also if you get a house there, that means obviously your children grow up there, which is always the case those days, right? So you go in there, your dad's from that village, or your mom's from there, your children grew up there. So that's stable. Okay. If that's the scenario that you live in, then it makes sense to get a mortgage. That makes sense. Also, then we talk about your father, mother, then that's generational wealth. So if you're going to buy, or your dad's bought a house, okay, and then for some reason they bequeath that to you, or you inherit it, then that helps, right? So that's good because then you're passing generational wealth. You can also pass stocks and other investment, by the way, but let's talk about houses for now. So with that, that helps you that you can always pass on the mortgage, or pass on mortgage, pass on the house. That helps. Generational wealth is important for mortgages. Again, I'm trying to be positive on the home mortgage front. Then let's not forget as well, it also helps with savings. So if for some reason you have a mortgage and you pay an interest rate on the mortgage, you can write off those interests, which helps. Okay, so that's important, especially in the US, Switzerland, and a few other countries. The interest on mortgage is seen as, as you can offset those interests in terms of tax payment. So there's some tax advantage there. But other than that, it's hard to argue any other case, right? And so those are good cases, I agree. And but like I said, if you start from the top in terms of housing, right? So your dad, your mom, so your dad lives in a village, your mom lives in a village, and then you want to grow up in that village. It's hard to see that these days. So especially with COVID called out those questions. If you live in London and you live in central London and the house in central London is 500,000 or 600,000 for a flat, 600,000. And I guess what? Do you really have? Even if you work in London, right? You don't have to live in London. So COVID ruined all that for the banks, ruined it for property investors, ruined it for local governments as well, who really really wanted to see people live in that area, pay tax in that area, buy coffee, buy food, buy restaurants, and create a whole community, and also jack up the prices, right? So with COVID, people now realize, wait, I don't have to stay in central London. I can walk from because I'm sitting in front of a computer. I'm sitting there talking to people. There's a whole episode on working from home and what I think about it. But right now, I think if you look at it, you don't have to live in that area, right? And that's the case. So if you and a lot of people nowadays they grow up, in one village, they want to try other villages, they want to try other countries, and if you do that, then guess what? Do you really need a mortgage then? Should you get a mortgage because you don't know where you'd live? A lot of people these days they get up, they live in the US, and then they wait a minute, I'm going to try South America. They try South America, Brazil, and they love it. If you had a mortgage, you're not going to do that. So what you should do then is actually wait, see where you want to live, see where you grow up, and then from there you decide if you want a mortgage there. And then in terms of mortgage, you still have to then look at the pricing. So why would you get a house in the US with 600K when you can get a lovely family home in let's say South Africa for 200K? And then your mortgage and your salary is commensurate to what you pay. And then obviously, hopefully, you finish the mortgage on time. Because again, I go back to generational wealth. These days, and there's another episode. There's a lot of talk these days on if we're rich, and I think I'll address that question. If we're rich compared to our parents, right? So those days, your parents would have paid off the mortgage years ago. Like they pay off the mortgage to pass you the house, and you're living in your family home. These days, and even I'd say the generation before us, um, it's hard for them to finish off a mortgage. Just when you finish up paying the mortgage at about 60, 61 these days on average, about 90% of us finish paying the mortgage about 60, 61. But when you're done paying the mortgage, then what? That's your house. You live there. It's not like you're going to sell the house. It's not investment. It's not a car that you could sell. You live in that house. So that means your children either live in that house or go buy their own house. You're not passing that on until you die. So if you die at 61, that's good. That's why your kids home. But these days we live longer. So that what that means then is you have the house and you can't pass it on. And what you're stuck with then is actually using the house that you fully paid for to pay for a home or a flat because you moved out of that house. Your children are forced to move out. So then you have to ask yourself the whole mortgage idea, should it be called to question? Is it really an investment? Is that something you should even do or you should just rent? That's something to look at. And again, I'll give advice at the end or thoughts at the end. But my idea is just to call these things to question to say, okay, wait, is it really still the case as it was those days in the 19th centuries and 18th centuries when you could buy a house, finish paying the house and pass it to your children? You can't do that these days anymore. So that's important. So And then obviously there's also the case that this is now opened, especially these days with fintech, right? So people know how much things are worth, and people don't want to be locked down. I mean, for us, from our rings, we don't want to be locked down to our phones. Like, so we have our payments on our fingertips. How much more a house? You don't want to be locked down into a 6, 7 bed house where you're paying mortgages and you're stuck in that same town for the rest of your life, right? People want to travel, people want to leave, people want to try other places. The world is becoming a global village. But unless you pass on the mortgage to other people, there's no point locking yourself down for so long. Okay. So, in summary, I think my idea would be, or my suggestion would be to review your current case. So, don't leave the dream of what the general media says, and always look at things from your own lens. Be selfish. So, when it comes to your partner, you spend some time thinking about your partner. When it comes to getting into a debt for 30 years, spend a lot of time looking through it. That's key. Don't just look at a brochure or a house and decide, oh, yeah, I want that, because that's going to be 30 years of your life. If you're going to buy a car today, you buy a car, you're going to use the car for maximum 1 year, but you look through it and you make sure you're happy with the car. So how much more a house? Huge. That's the biggest expense you're going to do. Apart from choosing your partner, so your partner lasts, again, in general these days, but it's shorter. But in general, it's about, 40 years, 50 years. Okay. So you meet your partner by 60, 65, you're over, right? In truth, partnership is the biggest thing ever. The next thing after that is it's your house, it's your mortgage. So we need to spend time looking through it and seeing that that's exactly what we want to do. That means you look at the schools around there to say, okay, is this where my kids are going to go to school? Because if you grow up there, if you buy a property in, let's think about it, if you buy a property in Oxford or in Cambridge or in the US, you buy a property in New York, then that's an investment because ultimately you can move away from there and rent it out. But if you buy a home on the outskirts of a town in a big house in a neighborhood, then guess what? The kind of people that you need to sell that house to is so unique and so minor that you can't just assume, yeah, that you will sell it out next day. So that means you gain houses are stuck on the market for months. Number one. Number two, you're then tied down to that location. So think, guys, and be selfish. Okay. Think about yourself, think about your future, decide what you want to do. It's hard to see yourself in the next 10 to 20 years. What would help you is the conditions, the area around it to say, okay, what are there schools around there? If you attend a church or mosque or anywhere, are those around there? So you're not commuting all the way for that. How about work? Okay, if that's the closest place you, especially if you can't work from home or your work is not as flexible, if you work in the post office, then you need to make sure that those, your role or your job or your career is within that area and then you can live there. And that's it. So that's my suggestion. Again, rather vague, but my suggestion, we're all unique. But I think we should really, really question if you need a mortgage because it's important. And if it's not clear, it's not an investment. So a mortgage will not, unless it's your second or third home, then it's an investment. But about 90% of us actually buy a mortgage. The first house you get is usually the house you live in. And if you live in a house, then it's not an investment. It's as crazy as buying a muffin and claiming that a muffin is an investment. It's not an investment because you're eating it, you're consuming it. The same way with the house, you're consuming the house, you're using the house. If you sell the house, you're homeless. So that means you need to use the property and sell and then get something and then pay taxes, pay the agents, pay a lot of things. So that at the end, you're not left with much. So it's not really a house per se, other than it's a life choice. Yeah, it's a really, really important life choice. So that's it from me. Thanks, guys. I need to get back to work servicing my customers on the Orukka community. Do join us. Download the app if you haven't, Money Save, or go to www.orukka.com and order your payment right now. See you on the next one. Bye.